Welcome back to Strange Stories with the Seeker and the Skeptic. Today, our friend Heather Hubbard returns to the show to talk to us about the reopening of her business, A Heathen's Touch, and also share some insights she gained about Jonathan by listening to one of our episodes, which we're very excited to talk about that. So, welcome back, Heather. We're so glad to have you with us again.
Thanks. I'm super excited.
We're excited too. So, you told us at the end of the last episode we did with you that you were
Yeah.
getting ready to do this web series.
Yes.
So tell us all about that. What was that about and what happened?
All right. So it's called The Blox, and the host of the show is Wes Bergman, who a lot of people know from The Challenge, and he calls himself the world's foremost reality star. Um, but so he's the host, and so basically I went to Oklahoma for a week. It was like one day of travel, 5 days of classes, and then another day of travel. So each of the 5 days, there's like these intense lessons, and then it's usually like a 2 hour class with like tons and tons of info. And then they're like, we break for lunch, then they come back and they're like, here's the rules for the activity. Now you have 15 minutes to go write a 3 minute presentation and go.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So you have to take what you learned in the class that day and like do a presentation on how you're going to apply that information to your business. And then they had I think it was 9 different coaches. So we break off into what they call pods, and each pod has a different coach. So each day you're with a different coach. And these people are like from all different kinds of things. Like one of them is like, a marketing business owner that makes like $1 million a year or something. One of them, I think, was like an aerospace engineer. So these are like big time business people, and they're like doing one-on-one consults with us. Um, so anyways, so we break off into the pods, do the 3 minute presentation, and then we have 15 minutes with the judge where they'll ask us questions and we can basically get feedback from them on what we can do better and things like that. Um, and then after all that's done, we break for dinner and then come back for what they call the blocks off, where they choose a winner from each pod. And then there's a task for those people. And it'll be something like you have 10 minutes to write 2 minute presentation on like one very specific part of today's lesson. Or it'll be you have to wait in the green room and then come on stage one at a time and answer questions that you have no idea what questions to expect.
Wow.
um, so that was how each of the 5 days went.
That
Yeah,
sounds incredible and super intense.
it was very intense. And I believe I've heard a lot of different numbers from a lot of people, but I think there was like 50,000 applicants and like 80 of us got chosen for that season.
Wow.
Yeah. So, like in my brain, when this whole thing happened, I was just like, oh, is this a scam? Is this for real? And like finding that out because, they picked me from upstate New York. Like, I feel like a nobody in the world, and they picked me. So I'm like, this has got to be like some kind of scam or something. But then finding out they had that many applications
Yeah.
and I was one of the 80, I'm like, okay, I guess it's not as scammy as I thought.
Yeah. That is
Um,
awesome.
yeah, it
Very
was
cool.
really crazy. So there was 80 other business owners there, and we all got to know each other really well. We all like brainstormed, help each other come up with ideas. Like, what are you stuck on? What advice do I have? Like, what have I done with my business that could help you? So it was a lot of connections as well.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that they told us is they market it as a reality series because, like, that gets people's interest. But what it really is like an educational documentary with like a slight competition component
Right.
just to add that level of interest.
Yeah. Yeah. They have to have some kind of story to tell, but it's like
Exactly.
business boot camp. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It basically is. And where I was at in my business is, I had closed my doors so I could save money up to go to the Blox, and knowing that when I come back, I'm going to be looking for a new location. So it was really like a starting over kind of time. And every single class that they taught was something that I really needed,
Hmm.
like things that I should have known and should have been doing right from the start. And I didn't even know I should have been doing it
Right.
because I had no idea how to run an actual business.
Yeah.
And so, like, these classes were like blowing my freaking mind. Like, how did I not know this thing?
Yeah. That's awesome, though. It was exactly what
It
you
was.
needed.
It was exactly what I needed.
Yeah. So, what are some of the changes you've made to your business now that you're reopened and you've gone through this whole experience?
Well, the biggest change is like swapping roles with Amy. Because at our other location, she ran the building. She was like the main person, and I rented my space from her. And so coming into her already existing community, I never really felt like I had to, well, I didn't even know I should, like, make an identity for my business. It was just like, okay, we're here. She's already got these people coming in. I'll just like hop into the whole scenario too. Um, so that was one of the biggest things that I learned is that I needed to establish an identity for my business, like apart from Amy and Amethyst Reiki. So, we had a conversation after I got back about how, that's what I needed to do. And she was like, well, actually, I've been thinking the same thing, is that the next location should be a Heathen's Touch. And then I'll rent space from you so I can come in and teach classes and stuff. And so it's my space, it's my name on the building. And then she also has the freedom to bring her classes to other locations and like spread more geographically.
Gotcha.
So, that is going to work out really good for both of us.
Hmm.
And I think that was my biggest takeaway is
Yeah.
that I had to like establish an identity.
Hmm.
Who knew?
These guys did. That's
They
awesome,
did.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weston Bergman knew all about it.
He Well, and I mean, so many of us, like I'm the same like I tell people, and I shouldn't keep saying this because I don't want to reinforce this energy, but I'm like, I'm a terrible businesswoman. And it's true because it's like I became a business owner because I didn't want to work for other people, right? But
Yeah,
like
man.
that's not my brain. It's not like a business brain. It is healing and helping and supporting other people, but
Yeah,
there's a business attached to it and there's things that
exactly.
you need to learn, but I'm so happy that you had that experience. It's very cool.
Me too. And I actually had a chance to sit down with one of the coaches, um, who I later found out is like a she does marketing, but she helps other businesses who are like women-owned spiritual businesses with
Nice.
marketing.
That's
And I
awesome.
didn't realize that till like after I got home and I was like looking at her online and stuff, and I'm like, holy shit, like that was freaking perfect for me. But she looked at my brochure and was like, you really need to be charging more for your services. And I'm like, but where I live, I don't know if people are going to pay that. And she's like, they'll pay more than that. Like, you really need to charge more. And I'm like, well, so I did restructure my services a little bit, but I didn't go overboard.
Mm-hmm.
But especially with the Akashic Records, because like we were talking about, not a lot of people do that around here. So it is a more specialized
Yep.
service that you can't like go 5 minutes down the street and get
Right.
from somebody else.
Right, exactly. Like
Yeah.
you said, like lots of people read tarot and that's awesome, but that sets you apart and it's
Yes.
valuable. I mean, it's definitely
That's why I'm
valuable healing work.
focusing in on that more
Mm-hmm.
because you can't, there's so many Reiki masters around here, there's so many tarot readers. So I'm like really focusing on Akashic Records because that is the one thing that I have that I don't know many other people that have around here.
Yep. Which is a good segue into the
Yes.
second part of our
Let's
conversation.
segue.
Yeah, so you sent me a message about Jonathan a couple weeks ago. So
Yes.
tell us everything about this.
Recently, well, within the last like several months, um, I have discovered that within the Akashic records, I do have access to records of other universes, but not just our universe. Um, and just from what I've been able to gather, my soul's origin is actually from another dimension that has access to all these different universes, and that's why I'm able to have that access.
Interesting.
Um, but I have worked with a couple of people who also are not from here and just doing work on them on their records from this universe. They didn't really get the intended results, but then once I discovered this whole like other universes thing, I went and did the same healing in the original universe and there was much better results.
That's very interesting.
Yes. So that leads me to listening to your guys' podcast because I'll be honest with you, I didn't really listen to it before I talked to you guys last time.
That's okay.
And
That's totally fine.
so I went back and was listening to a bunch and I was like, man, this is awesome. And Jonathan, your story about like the owl, I don't know if you've said this directly or not, but alien abduction,
Hmm.
um, you were talking about that and like in my brain, okay, so here's how I see it with these other universes. I'm sorry to go back here, but so when I go in my records, it looks like a train platform, and then there's these like strings of lights with like light bulbs along them, basically, and like those are the individual records. But for these other universes, there's like these hatches in the floor of the platform, and like a square around it, there's like light emanating from underneath, and it's all different colors. So each door has its own color. So, anyway, so I'm listening to your story about this alien abduction, and I'm like driving along listening to this, and like suddenly my train platform pops into my head and like goes straight over to this one certain trap door, and I'm like, oh shit. I wonder if Jonathan's not from here. And that has been like on my mind for months now. So I don't really know you or your life or anything, but the other individuals that I've worked with that were not from this universe, they have a lot of health problems and it seems kind of like their bodies are deteriorating because it's not the material that's meant to hold their soul.
I don't like that.
It's
What's
interesting.
your idea or what's your thoughts on that, John?
Well, what you said that there's colors associated with these things. What color was that one?
Brown.
Okay, fair enough.
So I
Well,
haven't been into that hatch, but it makes me feel very earthy. Like just the brown color, it feels like soil, earth, like a like maybe like a foresty place. I mean, it's a whole universe, but like that's
Yeah.
the feeling that I'm getting.
well, it's definitely interesting. I don't have any kind of like chronic like health like life threatening kind of anything.
No,
I do
okay.
suffer from a condition called lymphedema in my lower legs, which has been a
Yeah.
fair annoyance over the past couple of years. It's been, I'm treating it, and
Autoimmune, right?
it
Is it an
is
autoimmune thing?
a lot of times something like that can cause it. For me, it's based on poor circulation and
Oh, okay.
some unfortunate living conditions a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, it just causes lymphatic fluid not to drain back out of certain body parts
Yep.
properly. Um, Being treated and at some point, should be all right again, but it's definitely something that has taken a couple of years to get a handle on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that definitely is a thing I've been dealing with for a little while now, for sure. I've
Let
been
me
very
stop you for
fortunate.
1 second.
Okay.
So before I got into this whole world, I was a massage therapist. Have you tried lymphatic drainage massage?
I have something called a lymphopress, which is a mechanical device that does that for
Okay,
you. Um, but
interesting.
through it's pneumatic sleeves you put over the limbs, and it's got
Hmm.
like four compartments that go away from you towards you to get that
Right.
out.
Okay.
It's a very similar process, that does not involve people actually laying hands on you.
All right. Fair enough.
So, just to s- kind of scope out of this a little bit, just for context on
Yep.
this overall thing, how how long has this been making itself known to you overall?
So I first took the Akashic Record class with Brittany in 2020,
Hmm.
and then, I didn't really work with it that much until maybe like 2 years ago. And pretty much every time I've had a session with somebody, I figure out another like part of it,
Hmm.
like a new way to do something, or they need something that I hadn't done before and I try it and it works.
Hmm.
So it's just been like continually developing. And then the universe thing just kind of came up because, the person I was working with didn't have the results that we wanted, and they had mentioned like they didn't feel like they were from here. And so, I asked my guides like, hey, is that the case? Am I able to like access the other things? And so then like the first door showed up, and then I was working with someone else and the same kind of thing came up, and then suddenly there's like a whole bunch of doors. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's a whole thing now.
Very interesting. So, you said like you kind of have some experience with the dimension that you're from. Do you like, is there a name attached to it or?
Honestly, I don't know. That was kind of one of the last things that I figured out about this whole thing, because I was trying to figure out like why do I have this
Mhm.
access? But I honestly haven't really like got into it too much
Mhm.
to discover what this like alternate dimension is or whatever. So I'm not really sure.
Do you find yourself focusing more on helping people than exploring your own stuff?
Yes, I do.
That does seem to be the case from the things you said to us before, and I get
Yeah,
how that could be a thing. Um, it I think it's important for people to focus on themselves a little bit too, because the more you
yeah.
understand about yourself, the more you're going to be able to help other people. That's just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Chad.
Um,
If you want brutal honesty, come to Jonathan.
I
Yeah,
don't know how to be any other way. It's one of those
I
kind
mean,
of,
that is something
specters
that
of
I'm
things.
aware of, but I think any healer will tell you that they definitely don't do for themselves what they do for others.
I think that is, yes, I think that is true of many of us. It's
Yes.
easier to focus on everyone
Looking at
else.
you, Brittany.
Hey, I took a rest day today, so after I burned my
Whoa.
hand touching,
Oh,
I don't think that counts. I'm just saying.
so that was kind of a necessity.
Yeah.
yeah, touching
Yeah.
something that came directly out of the oven with my bare hand was super brilliant, but
Whoopsie.
things
Yeah.
happen.
We all
Okay.
do it from time to time. I have a couple of thoughts, some things that
Okay.
that kind of come to mind that are interesting in this context. Um, I think it was I want to say it was in September when Brittany and I were reading about this kind of stuff, and she
Mhm.
has access to some guided meditations. Was that September, do you think?
I have no idea.
I don't either. I have no concept of time anymore.
Okay.
The
It was
Probably.
lockdowns have
sometime before
ruined that for
now.
me. For
Yes.
sure. So at some point in the recent past. Um, and so after reading a book about this stuff and looking at it a little bit, and I had actually read a book from the Seth material called Seth Speaks. That's super interesting. Um, we decided to do a guided meditation that deals with that stuff, and it was about 25
Is that
minutes.
the guided meditation you did for your podcast?
Yes, we did
Yeah,
do an
Where you
episode
like
about it.
yeah, you like broke, went and did the meditation and then came back and like
Yes.
talked about it after.
right.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Right. Well, with that, I did not have the expected effect from that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of had a little bit of some visualization there that, that I saw some swirling colors and it was relaxing to me, but I didn't experience the things that the people who typically do these types of things experience. And,
Mm-hmm.
that's not abnormal for me to have a different experience than other people in circumstances like that. And, maybe those things are connected to each other. Maybe that has something to do with it.
Well, one of the things
Yeah,
that you
maybe.
saw was an alien face too, right?
That is true. Yep. It was mostly
Mm.
swirling purple colors, but a few things kind of came out of that, and there was a face that would be pretty close to either like maybe the classical gray or like Crowley's Iwas painting, something between those two things. Um, and that was super interesting to me. I definitely am someone who, you know, the people I'm close to, I'm very close to, but there are a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people who, you know, don't like me on sight more than you would. I mean, everyone experiences that in their life. No,
Mm-hmm.
nobody is universally enjoyed, like nobody, but like to the point where like people who are friends of mine have been like confused by strangers at times when like I'll walk into like a bar with some friends and there's people who just start like mean mugging me for no reason, and it feels more than the normal. This person doesn't is not from here kind of thing, and that's
Weird.
happened my entire life, to the point where I've had friends who have almost started fights with other people in places because of the reaction that the strangers were having to me for no reason, and they could tell it was for no reason. But
Oh,
the people who are into me are really, really into me. Like there's just no middle ground with me. And,
yeah.
you know, there have been people who have said to me that I don't seem like I am from the place that we are. And usually what they mean by that is like, Virginia, but like
Yeah.
maybe they don't have words for it. I mean, who knows? Like, I'm 42, so I've got, 4 decades of experience to pull from. If you asked me these questions when I was 20, I don't know if I would have had any answers at all. So it's
Yeah.
just, perspective is interesting for sure.
Well, I also wanted to say, like you said you saw like an alien face that was like kind of reminiscent of like a gray alien. And what I have found as well is that a lot of times when you receive images, it's something that you're able to recognize. So if you just saw like from other universes, beings don't look humanoid at all. They could look like anything. So if you just see like a blob of mud, you're not going to be like, oh, that's a being from another universe. So you're seeing what you would recognize as an alien to represent a being from another universe, potentially.
Makes a lot of sense. And two, like if you're I don't know, this is like a half formulated thought, but like if your Akashic records are not earth-based and you're doing a guided meditation that is getting you into an earth-based record, right? It would make sense that you would have a more difficult time kind of following along with the prompts and you know what I mean? Like that you would experience something different. I don't
Well,
know.
the thing I've found, like with the people that I've worked with who are from other universes, you do have Earth-based records as well because you've spent however many
Right.
lifetimes here, but then you also have records from your home universe.
That makes
So it's
sense.
like two whole separate pieces of healing that are happening. Um, but just with the experiences, and like I know you've been doing the podcast and everything, so you're doing a lot more digging. So maybe it's the things from your previous universe that are now coming up and coming forward so you can acknowledge them because
Hmm.
you're more open to it.
Yep. I think when we're in New York, we're gonna have to pay you a visit and do a session.
Outside
Um,
store hours.
yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very interested in that as well. We should definitely make that happen. And and yeah, it's not just actually the podcast stuff. Actually, I don't know how to to half anything. Like I'm always like kind of 100% on whatever I'm doing. Um, but in the past 8 months, I think I've read about 60 esoterica books. Um,
Okay.
and have had a lot of conversations with a lot of really knowledgeable people about different things within the non-standard American life. So
Yeah,
I'm pretty immersed at the moment, I think.
exactly. So you're opening yourself up to receiving more of that information, though.
Do you know anything about the other universes, like from the people that you've worked with? Have you been able to kind of like see anything about them or understand anything about them?
Mm, so with my work in the records, I don't see a lot. Like basically, since I do healing and not readings, I basically just ask for, the information that I'm looking for that needs to be healed, and I see like little snapshots,
Hmm.
and it they basically only show me as much as I need to know to heal that thing.
Hmm.
So I haven't really seen a lot. Um, but I know that the beings in other places are not humanoid.
Okay.
Um, one of the universes I've been to, it was like airy, like the beings were, I don't know how to describe it. They were like made out of air,
So
like
not
beings of
necessarily,
energy.
okay, not like a physical form, it's more of an energetic form.
Right,
Interesting.
exactly. Um, in another universe, the people were made out of land, like actual pieces of land that like walked around
That's cool.
on the land.
Yeah.
Um, so that's why I said, like, if you were shown like a blob of mud or something, you wouldn't be like, oh, that's an alien from another universe.
Right.
Hey, that's Jeff.
If you were, what's that?
So yeah, that's Jeff. Jeff, the mud guy. Jeff.
Oh man. But yeah, I mean, that's really all I know about it so far.
Hmm.
And also, like, it's a whole entire universe. So maybe these little pieces that I've seen is like one planet's worth. Like, you know, the one with the energetic beings, that might not even represent the entire universe, but just like that one little snapshot where I was like healing that one person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So these are things that I'm still learning as well.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty fascinating and I mean, I think it's exciting to
I
explore
think it's
these things.
exciting too. And okay, so let me just like get a little crazy here for a second. When I first like discovered this whole like multiple universes thing, I'm like, what is the purpose of this? Like, I'm supposed to be healing on this like massive scale and like heal everybody in the world. And what am I doing with this? And basically, it's just like, you know, what can I do with this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guess I just continue helping like one person at a time, and like that's all there is to it. But like, I want it to be something bigger because I'm just so excited about it and I want to learn more and I want to know more about it.
Yeah.
But I just don't think that's the reality.
Well, I mean, as you said, like each time that you're in the records and you're working with somebody, it's like expanding for you, and
Hmm.
so it's like, don't, it could become something much bigger than individual,
Maybe.
So the
And you
path will
know,
become clear.
I'm always watching these documentaries. And I just watched the new one on Netflix, The Program, where it was about these kids that were in this quote school in Ogdensburg, New York, and they were basically like abused, and it was like cult like. They were like
Mhm.
totally cut off from their parents, and all these people have so much trauma. And like in my brain, when I'm watching these things, I'm like, man, those people could really use some Akashic record healing. So like when I was watching this one a couple days ago, I'm like, geez, I wonder if it's possible to just go in and like cut all the cords from that location and it like helps everybody out a little bit. But like, I don't even know if that's a thing or if that's even ethical to do, you
Well,
know?
I feel like with the Akashic records, if you aren't allowed to have access, you won't have access,
Hmm.
and I have heard of people, like my Akashic records teacher had talked about places have records. You can access
Yeah,
records. Like, if
yeah,
you're gonna buy a house or get a new office space, like you can open up the records and kind of see what the energy is there. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go into a person's records without their permission,
right,
but if it's a
right.
place to do like a healing, I don't see anything unethical about that. And if it's
Because
not
I'm not
allowed,
connecting to someone's energy.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
a location. And that could be a benefit if you could do some healing around that. So I think try it. And if you're not allowed to, you just won't be able to access it.
yeah, that's true. I'll have to get with my guides on this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'll go on the pile of things that I need to do for myself.
There you go.
So, I mean, I've heard people talking about star seeds. Would you say that is a accurate like categorization of people who are from a different universe or dimension? Is that they're technically a star seed, or is that something else entirely?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not very familiar. I've heard the term starseed, but I'm not really sure what the actual definition of that is.
Okay. We'll just cut
Would
that
you
out.
like to elaborate on that?
I I honestly don't know either, but I mean,
Okay.
my understanding was like they're people whose soul is not originally from Earth. So it
Oh,
sounds kind of like what you're talking about.
okay. Um, so just on that explanation, I would say that they wouldn't necessarily be from another universe. They could be like a celestial being from this universe that has just come to Earth.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
because I mean, if you think about it, our universe, like, nobody even knows how big it is. Like, there could be, 100 million planets with living beings in this universe alone.
Yeah.
So, like, all the souls could be from any of those 100 million planets and still be from this universe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess there's maybe a distinction between like an extraterrestrial soul and an I don't know the word, but a different
Extra universal.
dimensional, yeah, extra universal soul, which just opens up so many more.
There's so many levels or
Yeah,
layers.
yeah. Do you believe, I mean, I know that you probably don't have any way of knowing this for
Mhm.
sure, but do you think that beings from other dimensions can physically travel here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, I think it's probably easier to travel between dimensions than it is to travel between universes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because basically all you got to do is like pop a portal and like, hey, I'm in this other dimension.
So, okay, so dimension and dimension and universes are two different things, is what you're saying.
Oh, yeah. Like the way
Okay.
I think of dimensions is, it could be a parallel dimension where it's like literally right next to ours.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just happening there where we can't see it. It's out of our eyesight, but it's still something that's happening right next to us. Um, so I feel like dimensions, man, I never really thought this much about it to try to describe them. But, there can be like tons of layers of dimensions, like all stacked on top of each other. And like if you pop a portal open, like you drop through all these different layers and like suddenly you're in a whole different dimension. Like the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
With Doctor Strange, where they're going through all those portals and going to all these different things. That's how I feel like is dimensions are.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I get what you're saying on that. And then, universes would be specific physical universes that would be distinct and separate from our own, but are definitely physical spaces within the same dimension that we exist in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So when you're
gotcha.
talking about traveling between universes or traveling between dimensions, dimensions could literally be like 2 inches away from us, where universes are like however many light years away. So just the distance that you have to travel between universes and the distance you have to travel between dimensions is incalculable.
Oh, the brain melt over here.
I know.
This is definitely has given me some stuff to think about for sure in context of, you know, um, how I experience, the phenomenon overall and how I experience different things in my life. I mean, it's definitely uh, maybe some different context to think about going
Hmm.
into some other stuff. Um, I definitely so when Brittany had mentioned that we were going to talk about this stuff, and she kind of gave me an overview of what you were going to say. Um, it had I told you that story before, Brittany, the story I told you about when I was 11, or
I
was
don't
that the first
think.
time I told you that?
I think it was the first time you told me that.
Um, a story that I don't know that I've ever actually told anybody before. But when I was 11, we lived on a farm in the middle of Robeson County, North Carolina. It's basically adjacent to this place called Fayetteville, which is very well known as like a hub of weird activity. A couple of people have written books who are from very near where I'm from about
Mm,
experiences that are very similar to the experiences that I've had. Weird lights, owl encounters, near death
interesting.
experiences, lights, all kinds of strange stuff. And I had a I would say a difficult family life growing up, and we were miles away from anything. This was a very secluded place, and it was summer in rural North Carolina, and it's a 100-year-old house that definitely did not have anything like central air. So you can
Yeah.
imagine how that felt physically with the humidity and the heat. And I, had a bad experience with my family that night, and it was probably like 11 o'clock at night, and I'll never forget this night. But I've never told this story except for the one time to Brittany about a week ago. Um, I just had this really weird feeling, and the air felt kind of charged, and I just kept focusing on getting away from the situation that I was in. In as much words as my 11-year-old brain could really, you know, I was a fairly smart kid, but when you're 11, you're just 11. So like you don't have the words to really articulate why the things that are bad are bad. You just know that
Yeah.
things have to be better somewhere else. And being, 2 or 3 miles walking away from anything, running away was not really an option in that situation. It just wasn't going to happen. And I was so focused on being somewhere else, and the air felt more and more kind of charged. And then I felt like I was kind of vibrating for a while there. And my vision, something filled up in my vision that I don't have a real definition for. There's not a color attached to it or anything. It just feels like something was there and then it wasn't there. And then the energy kind of dissipated, and then went to sleep.
Hmm.
And when I woke up the next morning, there were things that were different than when they had been when I had gone to sleep. We had a different, slightly different colored couch than we previously had had, and there had been no time for my parents to have replaced it. There's a couple, mostly really small stuff, like humorously enough, there's like a couple episodes of a couple TV shows that I remember vastly differently than what you could find on like streaming right now. Um,
Hmm.
a couple of people's names of people who I had known to that point most of my life were not quite the same as the names that I knew. Like to the point where like if like an old person said these things to you, you'd ask if they were smelling burning toast. Like, is this person having a stroke? I was 11.
Right.
And so like I knew it, I knew enough about my surroundings not to mention to anyone that I had noticed things were different because I knew I wasn't going to be believed. But for whatever reason, that is a thing that happened to me, and I felt like I was in a slightly different place. And so this kind of stuff, talk about this stuff kind of makes me think about that experience and wonder what it actually was.
That's really given me something to think about there too, John. So when you were describing like the charging of the energy and stuff, like I could feel kind of a pressure like in my like chest and throat area. Um, and like it felt like I was kind of envisioning like a crack in like space where like another dimension was like available. But why would things be slightly different like that? And like nobody else like acknowledged anything being different about anything.
Nope.
I mean, people talk about like the Mandela effect, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
people remember things in a very different way, the whole
Yes.
Shazam, Kazam thing,
Right.
those types of things. And to me, like my interpretation of that is hopping dimensions, and
Mm-hmm.
I've had an experience before where I was like, I know for a fact something was this way, and then it was not that way anymore.
Yeah.
And so like not as drastically as what he's talking about. It was like a lease, like the date on the lease when the lease was up. It was weird. It was just bizarre. But,
Right.
you know, I think I think that it happens probably to people in not as noticeable ways, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
interesting that you were like, get me out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. and then that experience happens. That's how I would interpret it, but I don't know if you would agree with that, Jonathan.
I've never known what to think about it. I just I mean, it's there's many things in my life as a kid were very not normal compared to most American people. I mean, I grew up, my parents were in a very benign, very non-threatening, but very much a Christian mysticism cult. Um,
I
and
remember that on your
from
podcast.
yeah, so if you start out life with that kind of, information going into your brain, whether it's actually real or not, it colors how you perceive reality. And then
Hmm.
you have to, reconcile that with the things that happen around you, that with people with very, very different experiences. Which I think is probably
Yeah.
part of why I've been good at dealing with people who are very different than me, because I've had to do it my entire life. But, with the, you know, going from that to, a very restrictive, my father decided on a whim to be a Southern Baptist minister when I was 12 years old, and went down that path. And it was a very different direction from Christian mysticism, for sure, because the Baptists think that nothing is real, basically, and that everything's in the
Oh.
past. They don't believe that, like, there's no active spirituality with them. They, at least Southern Baptists, they think that the things that they're in the Bible happened, but that stopped happening after the Bible got done being written, and then you go forward to the end of society, because they're a death cult. And
Oh.
so you go from this idea of, you know you can have what you claim, to nothing is real, nothing happened, it's just in the past. That's a paradigm shift that I had to deal with about a year after the experience I just talked about. But also, like, a lifetime of lights and seeing things, and talking to, people tell me things that maybe they shouldn't tell me. It's just, for whatever reason,
Hmm.
as a person, I'm just one of those people that people just open up to in ways that don't make sense. And so all of these things added together, plus the cohort of people that seem to just distrust me on sight more than you would expect from most people, has led
Hmm.
for it's just led to a very weird life. It's been a strange existence. Um,
So let me ask you this. With that experience when you were 11, other than like the color of the couch or like people's names, did you notice any changes in like people's personalities or behaviors or anything like that?
Unfortunately, no. All of the things that I was experiencing that was causing me to want to be somewhere else were still there.
Mm,
There have been times when I've kind of entertained the possibility that it was going from, like, a neighboring kind of a neighboring dimension from one to
yeah.
another, but not far enough away to make any real, like, when people talk about chaos magic or ritual magic, both, what you're doing is trying to change the statistical odds of the universe to be more in your favor. But the reason why that doesn't work for the lottery is because you can only change, like, 0.0000003% of an odds of something. So you can nudge
Hmm.
something, like you're playing pinball, and you kind of nudge the machine
Right.
without tilting it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the analogy that I get from that is, it's kind of like chaos magic, in which you can maybe make something more likely to be in your favor, but it's not going to be a $1 million lottery ticket.
Right. So you're saying that like it could have been your intention and putting out that energy of like wanting things to change that caused changes, but not on the scale that you were hoping for.
Potentially. I haven't ruled that
Okay.
out. I try not to come to any hard and fast conclusions about anything, because I feel like once you've done that, you're just immediately wrong.
Right,
Um,
right.
but as close to a conclusion as I'm willing to be seems fairly possible to me.
All right. That's crazy that it all kind of culminated in that one instant, though. Like normally with magic, it's kind of like a cumulative effect where it's like little by little, but this seems like it kind of was like, okay, it's the breaking point. Like everything's different now. So that's pretty interesting.
Interesting. So many things to just entertain and think about.
Yes, John, you've got some crazy stories that really just make me think about things a lot.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, I've either experienced a lot of strange stuff in my life or I'm a completely crazy person. One of those two things is true.
Well, I can
Maybe
verify.
both.
I think I can safely say that you're not completely crazy. Just mildly. Just
I'll take that.
kidding. So has there been, aside from like seeing like health issues and kind of like the physical deterioration, has there been anything else you've noticed about people, uh, any other like similarities between people who have come from a different universe?
So I've only worked with the two that I know of so
Okay,
far.
gotcha.
Um, and it really seems like the health stuff is like the most prominent thing that I've noticed between like that both of the people have shared.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if I'm able to work with more people from other universes, maybe other patterns will emerge,
Yep,
but it's a time will tell kind of scenario at this point.
yep.
Well, maybe someone will hear this and think, I gotta talk to her because this needs to happen. And then that'll just go into more of that stuff.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, maybe. Hopefully.
Yeah, if you feel like you are not from this universe, reach out to Heather. We will link all of her information in the show notes.
Awesome.
And reach out to us because we'll put you on the podcast.
Yeah, we would love to talk to
There you
you
go.
for sure. Wow, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm
Oh
very
yeah.
glad that you came back on the podcast to talk to us tonight.
I'm glad you had me back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was really surprised when you were like, hey, we should do the thing again. And I was like, ooh, yeah.
Well, I mean, I was already thinking about reaching out to you just because of the business reopening, and then you told me the
Oh,
whole
okay.
story about Jonathan, and I was like, well, of course
Now we
now
gotta do it.
we gotta do it. Yeah. So, how can people find you and your business?
Okay. So, if you're local to Central New York, I'm in Fulton. The address is 732 West Broadway. We're right across the street from the YMCA in the little strip mall there. Um, Also, the business phone number is 315-743-4003. You can Facebook message me. Oh, the phone number is good for calling or texting.
Okay.
Facebook Messenger. My email address is a heathens touch at gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word.
So mostly like Facebook would be a good place if they want to kind of see what's going on with the business and
Yeah,
stuff like that. Okay.
definitely.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, we can't wait to come visit you and see the new shop and hang out when we're in New York. So
Yes.
soon we will be there.
Very
And
soon.
Same.
Very soon.
awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was a great conversation.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. You take care and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks so much. I'll see you
Yep.
guys.
Bye. Thank you so much for being here. If you have a strange story you want to share with us, email us at seekerandskeptic@gmail.com. We look forward to talking to you soon.